Hello and welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Is Egg Shaped. The podcast is up and running, and do we have a guest for you? I am so excited by this one, as I've probably said at the beginning of every pod. But this man, when he was asked, he said to me, I don't do pods, but I'll do this one. Now, I don't know if that's the truth, but I'm taking it as a win because this guy he carries no threat. He is a nice, warm, humble guy who pokes fun at himself, but has done a lot of nice stuff. And there's a story that I'm not sure I'm going to tell. We'll see how we go. But everybody has a Deacon Blue story because this man was the drummer for Deacon Blue. He's also, I think, fast becoming a national treasure because everybody loves him. And a lot of the broadcasting that he does is nice and warm and cuddly out on the hills in the Scottish countryside doing good stuff with good people in the best country of the world. He's also all over sport, whether that is the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow or on football or, as we know and love, on lots of rugby. I've met him quite a few times, both in person, sometimes at Murrayfield, my favourite place, and also on here doing things in this strange situation that we've experienced in the last 12 months. Without any further ado, the one, the only, the magnificent Mr. Dougie Vipond. Yes!
Bruce, have you been on Happy Cornflakes this morning? Come on, what's going on? What an unbelievable introduction and something and no way I'm going to live up to it. Well, it's very nice to see you, Bruce.
Kidding me on. Dougie Vipond, you've done it all, man. You've done it all. Silence.
And only 35 years old. That's amazing.
Now, I've been warned by my mum that I have to stop laughing because she can't hear what the person says next. So I'm going to try and mute my laughter so that she can hear. Because let's face it, Dougie Vipond is everybody's mum's favourite.
Listen, don't worry about that because I don't actually say anything funny. So you'll have no reason to laugh in the next hour. So we'll be fine. We'll be absolutely fine.
Not in the slightest. And backstage, big handsome Sean from Fill Your Boots, who pushes the buttons and pulls the strings, and the two of us have been having a great chat. We decided, right, we better press record so that other people can hear what's going on. So let's start from the beginning. Where are you just now, and what are you up to?
I'm in Bridge of Allen, my hometown, my home village at the moment. I've been living here for the last 6 years, and I love it. Moved here to be close to Stirling County Rugby Club. And I just love being in the village. It's a great place. It really is a fantastic place to be. Lots of places to eat, lots of places to drink. Some nice wee pubs, although they're not open at the moment. And I'm filming for the new series of Landward. We just finished the Pro 14. In fact, that's not true. One more game to go. Glasgow are playing this weekend. But yeah, and I'm looking forward to the Rainbow Cup if it actually happens. So yeah, that's where I am. Bridge of Allen, home. Doing some filming and hopefully rearing to go for the end of the rugby season if it occurs.
And you've got your mate Nick Nairn who lives across the street or just next door.
Yeah, well, he does live 70 yards away, and I moved to Bridge of Allen and told him he was looking for somewhere to move to. I mentioned Bridge of Allen, but I also mentioned lots of other places. He moved here. He set up a telescope in his bedroom, looking straight into my bedroom. And it's actually embarrassing. He's stalking me. I had to get the authorities involved, and it just got a bit messy. It's really awful. Go away.
Go away. Now, the two you work together, though. The two you work together on Landward.
We do. We work together on Landward. We also have the Great Food Guys, which is a kind of thing that happened off the back of Landward. It's a series on BBC Scotland, which was using a lot of the stuff that we did on Landward. And the premise, those people who haven't seen Landward or know what Nick and I do, Nick is obviously a Michelin star chef. He's amazing. But I go out and find some food, the Scottish producers who do incredible things. And I go out and find some food and we cook it and generally go around Scotland in a van and serve it to people, and either to kind of educate their taste buds or to change their taste buds or simply just to celebrate the great produce we have. So, yeah, it's been great fun working with him, but I am very much his lackey. He knows what he's doing. I'm hopeless, totally hopeless. Excuse me. And I'm very happy to kind of be that guy. So that's why our relationship works. And I'd never call him chef as well, which is slightly kind of irks him. So that's good.
So how does TV work? You do Landward, and then do you say, this would be a really good thing, or do they come to you and say, this is really good, let's do more with it?
Okay, it's a bit of both, really. I mean, it's a really small team on Landward, a really, really small team, considering we do 13 programs a year. So it's a mixture of both. They have ideas and because we work in the Scottish countryside as well, lots of stories come around all the time. So similar stories that we've done last year or a couple of years ago come back. If we go and see someone who's starting a project, it's nice to be able to go back 3 or 4 years later. And Landward's been going for 45 years now. It's the longest running series on BBC Scotland. So we're still able to go back and do things. But I mean, the Scottish countryside is an ever changing thing, and I totally love it. So it's great to be part of. It really is.
And that's just one of the strings to the bow. How does the drummer from Deacon Blue end up doing a show with a Michelin star chef in the middle of the countryside in a van in Scotland?
Exactly. I've never been much of a planner in terms of my career. I've always been a bit of a stumbler when it comes to working out what I'm going to do. But the weird thing is how I got into telly was I knew Deacon Blue were splitting up in 1994. We'd made a decision about what we were going to do with the band. We needed to our relationship with the record company wasn't particularly great. And it was becoming miserable just to do what we were doing, which was a real shame because, we loved what we were doing. But we decided if it doesn't improve, the relationship doesn't improve, we'll kind of call it a day. So we decided that we would do a greatest hits album and a final tour and announce it on the tour. This is our last tour, and it'd be on a high and all that. And then I got a job I knew that I was only 27. So I knew I applied for a job at STV as a presenter on a program called NB, which was like a listings program for the summer. And I'd never applied for a job before, so I was really, really over-prepared. I was like, because I went from school to be a student, and then from a student to kind of be in Deacon Blue and all that. So I genuinely never applied for a job. So at 27 years old, I thought, well, I better make sure I know what I'm doing. And they asked us to go and review a play, an art exhibition, a theatre. There was like a theatre performance, an opera or something, and a gig. And I went to all of them, and I wrote a review of all of them, not knowing what to do. And I wrote pieces to camera, and I wrote and we knew I was going to go in for a screen test because I got to that point where we were going to go in for a screen test. And so I wrote all the pieces to camera, wrote all my questions, wrote a review of each of the things, and I took it in to the day of the audition. And they couldn't believe that I had done that. And I had a copy for the producer, for the director, for the camera person, and for myself, 4 copies of everything. I was super prepared and handed them out. And the producer said, "I can't believe you've done this." And I was like, "I can't believe they haven't done this. They're also coming for the job. Why have they not done that?" And then, so I kind of almost bullied my way into the job by being like really prepared. But at that time, I was still in the band. So I had to say, because the band were yet to do their tour, the final tour. So when I got the job, I said, "Right, don't announce this." It was on STV, and I said, "You cannot announce this. Please keep it under wraps, because we're still on tour. We're going to announce it on stage at the Albert Hall in London that this is the last tour. This is the last gigs ever." And then, of course, you can then announce that I'm going to be the new presenter of NB, because Brian Burnett had been the presenter up to that point.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, we were on tour, and every day off during the tour, this is a very long story, every day off during the tour, I was coming back up to Scotland to film. So it was an exhausting final tour. I was leaving the gigs, like finishing at 11 o'clock at night, say in Sheffield, then driving up overnight, and then filming all day with NB on a day off, and then traveling down the next day again to the next. By which point the band's moved to, Leicester or Leeds or whatever. So, and catching up with them and then doing the show. So I was knackered. But STV didn't. They reneged on the promise not to announce it. So they announced it before we announced Deacon Blue were splitting up. So it looked like I announced that I was the new presenter of NB, and then about 3 or 4 days later, Deacon Blue announced that we were splitting up. So it looked like I was the reason the band were splitting up, but
so you were Yoko Ono. You were the reason.
Yoko. I actually did say I blame Yoko. I Deacon Blue split up. It was Yoko's fault.
Yeah. So we're not here to provide lessons, but there's 2 bits in that I love. One is you didn't have a plan, which absolutely smacks with me, because there's no way I could have had a plan to have found myself where I am just now, and you've not. But the other bit is that over preparation, that absolute dedication to what you did. You've now got, or not now, you've had them for a while. You've got 3 boys. How often do you slip into the dad talk and give them those kind of lectures?
Well, I have to. But they wouldn't listen to one that was as long as that, because I'd have to edit it down. But yeah, of course, I drop into dad talk all the time. And my 3 boys are all the way out. They're all out of the house now. They're all onto further education. So my influence is kind of slightly waned, and I find that actually quite tough, because it was this year. My youngest, Hamish, who's only 17, he went away to Glasgow, and he's staying in halls of residence in Glasgow. He's studying ballet at the Royal Conservatoire, and I went there as a student, as a music student, a million years ago, when it was called the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama. So it's quite a lovely turnaround. That I met his mum there as well. So he's now a student where we actually met all those years ago. So that's quite lovely.
So how often were you told to get a real job?
Well, I was dead lucky, actually, because my mum and dad supported me to go and study music, because no one else in the family had done anything like that. My dad was very wary of it, as you can imagine. And I don't know about you, Bruce. I'm sure you wanted to play rugby for Scotland when you were at school, right? I wanted to play rugby for Scotland when I was at school. I wanted to play football for Scotland. I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to play volleyball. I would do all these things. And I was like, when I was very young, I realised I'm probably not going to be good enough at anything sport-wise to, represent Scotland. But musically, I could probably do that. I might be able to do this if I work hard enough. And I knew I had to work ridiculously hard. So the sport thing, I thought, right, it was genuinely my choice. So my dad was going, "You want to do music, or you want to do sport? You'll be going and serving your time. You're not doing any of that stuff." But actually, the reality was, he saw how hard I was prepared to work at it. He knew I never came home early from school any day. After school activities, we were lucky enough at that time to still have after school activities. There were a couple of teacher strikes around, but my school did keep some things going. And plus on the weekends I was out sort of doing music, and he saw how hard I wanted to do it, and so he supported me in that, and it was a big, an important thing. But he was always thinking, as long as I get a degree, as long as I get something that I can hang my hat on, and I can then potentially go on and do anything else. So he wanted to make sure that I studied properly and got a degree for it.
And the school that you went to, you wanted to go to because of music?
Yeah, I did. Well, 2 reasons: because of music and because of sport, and because they had after-school activities. I lived in Inchinnan when I was growing up in Renfrewshire, and the high school that most people went to, my brother went to, was Renfrew High School. And Renfrew High, my brother had a hard time there. He didn't really enjoy it very much. I think he got himself in a wee bit of bother. And he's 6 years older than me. And when I say a wee bit of bother, he didn't get himself any sort of bother. It was nothing major. He was just he just struggled. He had one teacher. He never got in the bother, and he didn't, he was never, he wasn't a troublemaker or anything. He had just one teacher he just did not get on with at all. And they had a tricky old time. But when you've got a brother who's 6 years older than you, and you're the only other Vipond in the place, you're like, are you Scott Viponds? Oh, shite. It was like in the Scouts. Yeah. The Scouts as well. Are you Scott's wee brother? Yeah. Oh no. So it's like, my brother's a brilliant guy. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, I thought, if I go to that school, then maybe this teacher will mark me. I don't know. But I knew this other school, Parkmeads High School in Erskine, and I knew that they were quite a new school. I knew they were a pretty vibrant school. The headmaster, a guy called David Smart, was a brilliantly sort of progressive He had great after-school activities. I mean, their after-school activities, they were amazing in sport and in music and all sorts of stuff. So I was desperate to go there, and also my music teacher, who taught me trumpet as a primary school. So, he was the guy that came around the schools and taught brass. He got a full-time job in Parkmeads High at the same time as I potentially was going to go there, and I really liked this guy. And he wanted me, and so I followed him, and so I made the right decision, because I don't think if I hadn't gone to that school, I wouldn't be doing this conversation. I definitely wouldn't be having this conversation. It was a great school.
And having those role models, without realizing it at the time, and this is one of the things I talk to the boys a lot, and in the schools I've worked in, I talk to kids about doing things they enjoy. Because if you enjoy them, you'll do them more and you tend to get better at them. Those can be both positive and negative things, unfortunately, but the things you enjoy, you do more of. So you obviously found the love for music and then you had people fueling it. How did you end up on the drums?
Well, I ended up in the drums because I did trumpet lessons and I was terrible. But it was this guy, Brian Duguid, right? He ended up going on to be head of instrumental tuition at Edinburgh, I think Edinburgh schools and East Lothian as well. I can't remember, but he ended up being head of music long after I left school. But Brian Duguid, he was a great laugh, absolutely fantastic laugh, and I wanted to do music, and my brother, we used to have a set of drumsticks lying about the house, and I always identified in bands, like, and my brother was a massive Queen fan, as am I, but Roger Taylor, the drummer, I thought, he's the coolest guy in the band. I mean, he's amazing. I love the drummer. He had these leopard skin trousers. I was like, yes, he's amazing. And it's watching Top of the Pops. I always watched the drummers, and it was like, there was something there. I was like, I picked up on rhythmic things, and all of that. There was definitely something there. And I just was the thing I identified with. And I spoke to that guy, Brian Duguid, who at that time was teaching trumpet and all that. So, and I said, I want to play drums in the primary school band. And he said, yeah, okay, but you're doing it properly. We're reading music. We're getting things for you. So you're still reading music. You're not just jamming along. If you're going to do this, do it properly. And I did. So I went to the high school with him, and there was the head of music there was a guy called Keith Hamilton. And Keith Hamilton was a bit of a hard ass, but a great guy. I mean, he was the guy that really pushed me. Brian Duguid was his assistant. So Brian was the kind of sort of younger, like,
cooler guy.
Chance your arm a wee bit. Later on, I must tell you a story. I actually used to go to pubs with him when I was still at school. I'll tell you that in a minute. But it's like, but Keith Hamilton was the hard ass. Brian Duguid was the cool guy. And then, so together they worked really, really well. Keith Hamilton didn't let me away with anything. He was like, because he saw I was kind of a chance it now and again. Brian Duguid, he'd be okay. Brian Duguid used to do this thing. He used to think it was the funniest thing in the world. Where we'd be in a band rehearsal. Because my school we had, which is not unusual now, but it was very unusual back then. We had an orchestra, like most schools had, but we had a wind band, concert band, jazz band, choir, senior choir, junior choir, and all these things. Now, we were one of the first schools in Scotland to actually have a drum kit. So none of schools had drum kits at that time. So we're looking back in the dark ages. No one had that kind of stuff, but Parkmains High did, because they were doing different types of music. But Brian Duguid, when he was conducting the band, he used to always go, now, Dougie, just do a wee fill, just do Dougie, and then laugh. And of course, all the band would laugh every rehearsal. Dougie. That's hilarious, Brian. But he just like did that all the time. And they were brilliant together. They worked really well. And then I ended up, Brian Duguid became a conductor for brass bands, senior brass bands. So as a senior school pupil, I used to go to brass band rehearsals with him. So we'd go like to Loudon Youth Band or the Co-op or Whitburn, because he was conducting, and they needed drummers percussionists that could read music. So I used to travel with him, and then after that we'd go for pints. I'd be 16, 17, all in for a pint afterwards. Not that I was drinking.
Yeah, I went on the Scotland supporters bus. My geography teacher, Mr. Patterson, learnt the pipes purely because he was part of the Tartan Army.
Yes.
And if ever there were tickets free for a midweek Scotland game, he would say, "H.A., do you want to come? Will you be allowed to come?" So my mum would pack me off on the Scotland supporters bus with all my teachers, Mr. Alexander, biology teacher, Mr. Aitken, English teacher, and they would have those little French bottles of beer that you got in 10-pack. And I remember him giving me one, and I couldn't work out how to open it. And I was like, what? And he was like, "It's a twist top." I was like, all right, yeah, okay. And then he would be miserable on a Thursday morning because he'd been out on the Scotland supporters bus. And then the head teacher at the time, Brian Keenan, had given him permission during Euro 96 to go down for the Scotland-England game, but nobody was to know. But then on the STV coverage, it cuts to Trafalgar Square and this piper in the middle of Trafalgar Square, and it's Mr. Patterson, who was supposed to be teaching geography at Gala Academy. It was like a story straight out of Ur Wully. It was brilliant. But yeah,
these guys are good, aren't they? They make up. I mean, you're a teacher yourself, so the influence that teachers can have on those formative years, the influence that any positive person can have during those times is just so important. I mean, God,
it's a great sign though, having all the bands. Bands to me are the sign of a healthy school, when kids feel that they can put themselves out there to perform, and music is so subjective.
Yeah.
So to put yourself up and say, right, like I remember going to another school to watch a concert, and they played a heap of Green Day, which is not everybody's cup of tea. But if you're going to stand up on stage and perform 3 songs from Green Day, that's bravery, determination, resilience, performance, communication. It's all those amazing things that we tell people we're teaching kids. But a band is an amazing thing. So was that where you found your belonging? Was that where you thought, this is where I can be the best me?
Yes. I mean, I think initially, Bruce, the reality was that because we had such a vibrant music department, and we did so many things within the school, and our Christmas concerts lasted a week. We had 5 nights of Christmas concerts because there was so much going on. What I saw was, if you do music, you get off classes. So, and if you're a drummer, you get set up. You've got to set up all the drums, so you get off even more classes. So it's great. Mr. Hamilton says I've got to think that a couple of times he did me in because Mr. Hamilton asked me if I can go up to the music department and set up for rehearsal. Did he? And so some teachers would go, whatever, go. And then other teachers before Mr. Hampton say, Douglas Vipond here says you've asked him to come up. Well, did he now? And he'd be in major shite then. But,
nice.
But yeah, I quite like the idea of getting out of classes. And I actually talked in my pal Martin Willis, who's now still a full-time musician, percussionist. We were at school together. I talked him into doing that because he was going to start playing the E flat horn or something. I'm like, that's dull. So, and I genuinely mean that is dull. So I said, be a drummer, be a percussionist. It's a great laugh when you get off classes and stuff. But he was quite a smart guy. Missing classes for him didn't matter. Missing classes for me was a major issue. So that's what I quite like. But I tell you, there was a genuine moment when I got into the Strathclyde Schools Orchestra. So you'd have like your schools orchestra, you'd have your Renfrewshire Schools Orchestra, and then Strathclyde, so the bigger one. And we were playing the Firebird Suite by Stravinsky. Right now, I'd never been exposed to this type of thing, and we used to go away on a music camp to Castle Tower in Dunoon, sort of over in the Cowal Peninsula. That was another reason to be part of the band, because you got magic trips. So we used to go there. Residential trip for a week, and we played this music, and this piece, Stravinsky's Firebird Suite, I remember listening to it, and suddenly because you've got your music, you're hearing what's going on, the percussion section's at the back, and I was hearing all these things happening, and you hear all that, and as you rehearse it more and more, you're expecting things and waiting things to happen, and you're following the score and all that stuff, and it actually affected me in an emotional way, yes, but also in a physical way, because it did something to me, that residential trip, when I was listening to this music, and I thought, this music's been written 100 years ago, but it's brilliant. It feels modern. It's got dissonance in it. It's got something. It's got rhythmical things. It's got weirdness in it, but everyone's playing it together, and somebody sat down and written that, and we're all following the guy at the front, and we're all part of a greater thing, and we're all pulling together for the same goal. And it was like, and I actually felt it was like a big emotional, kind of weird and physical change in me. And I thought, maybe I could do this as a living. This seems like a good thing to do. And it was on that trip that I kind of decided to actually, rather than arsing about, because actually I was kind of arsing about at that point. Actually, maybe I have to work hard at it. And so working hard, that's what I thought. If I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to have to be good and good enough to get a gig in an orchestra. So that's why I wanted to be an orchestral percussionist.
I love that. So that was your eureka moment. That was right, this is it.
Yeah.
And that's all those things you said. When people say sport can do that, but sport's not for everybody. Music has all those same qualities, and it brings people together. And the TV shows of going into the Raploch in Stirling and getting the orchestra together, or getting the choirs together. It's bringing people together for that common purpose. Mm-hmm. Build relationships, share experiences, create memories, whether it's sport or whether it's band or whether it's performance or public speaking or debate in society. It's finding that thing that triggers you. So that then takes you.
I was going
to
say, No, it does. I was going to say, but debating society, it was only certain people that ever worked in, it was only the smart folk who were really good at English who ever got to do the debate. You know what I mean? They were, that was unachievable for most people. But, being part of a musical group, I mean, also it helps in arithmetic as well. The amount of times when you're a percussionist, you have to count lots of bars when you don't do anything. So 53, 2, 3, 4, 523, 2, 3, 4. It's like, yeah, so all of that. But that confidence, having that ability to do things at a teenage, where that's when you become, it becomes, well, I don't know. I was always quite because I was involved in that. I think that gave me more confidence. But a lot of girls, a lot of women, especially, kind of become a little more insular when you're a teenager and all that. But being part of a bigger thing like an orchestra or a band or a team, and having the support around that is just so important. I mean, God Almighty, I'm so passionate about it. And recently, I've been part of the campaign to make sure that the instrumental tuition and sport and art and all these things are up there in the curriculum, because I know they were going to stop instrumental tuition in some of the regions, and that would just be horrendous, man. Because giving kids today less chance than I had, that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, I am. My kids were given their Christmas concert performance, and a little one, Katie, was in primary 1, and there were 8 classes in primary 1. So the hall is rammed with parents, and they'd set the kids up in a hexagon so that Katie was performing over there, so we were sitting over here, and that kid was there, so the parents were there, and it was really clever. And at the end, the deputy head teacher is holding the door open, and as we walk out, I said to her, do you know what I'm trying to figure out? When do we tell kids, or when do they start believing that they can't sing? Because every single one of those kids were belting out to the best they possibly could those Christmas carols, and it was beautiful to watch. But if you'd asked all the parents to do the same thing, the hall, there wouldn't have been many performers, because at some point we start saying things like, I'm not musical, I can't sing, I'm not sporty, I'm not a maths person, and it absolutely breaks my heart. I can't draw. It absolutely breaks my heart. I then went back to school, and the first person I met was the music teacher. And I started to have this conversation with the music teacher, because I said, I reckon every day, every person will click their fingers to music, will sing in the car or in the shower, or hum a tune, so everybody has some kind of musicality. Whether you want to listen to me sing or not is a different matter, but I can sing. You can sing. We might not be the one on stage in front of however many people at the Albert Hall, but why do kids stop doing stuff? And it's adults' perceptions onto them that you can't sing, and it absolutely breaks my heart.
Bruce, I can't believe you said that, because that's something that really, really upsets me too. Because it is so important to try and keep that positivity going. That's extraordinary you said that, because I'm now I met this girl Fiona, and we're now together, and and it's amazing and fantastic and brilliant. And she was told at school that she was tone deaf. Horrendous person. That's a horrendous thing to say to a child. She can sing. She's great, absolutely great. But every time she tries to, she's terrified. She becomes that wee lassie that's told she's rubbish. It's terrible. We should never do that. I've got other pals that have been told exactly the same thing. You're right. Everyone can sing. When you're a kid, everyone can draw. The very fact that we've all got accents means that we can sing, because accents are listening to somebody and talking like them. And that's what singing is initially. But before music was all written down, you heard the monk singing his thing in the church or the chapel or whatever, and you followed it. And similarly, a lot of the kind of the psalms in Gaelic culture is the same thing. You have a caller out the front, and they repeat it. Everyone can do it. Not everyone's brilliant at it, but everyone can do it. And accents and the way that people speak, because let's face it, the way you speak, being from Gala, is miserable and terrible. And why would you ever want to speak like that? But anyone from Gala has learned to sing the Gala way. It's like, and I've been learned to sing the wherever I'm from way. I don't know, but accents are all to do with the fact that you're following the singer. You've heard singers, especially people speaking, are actually singing, because the voice comes up and down. If you can repeat that, you can sing that back too, and it really upsets me too. We should never do that. Never tell them the kids draw. All kids can draw.
But do you know though, there's still there are still teachers telling kids, you'll never be a musician, or you'll never be a rugby player, or that's still, even though we know all the stuff we know, there are still people telling kids what they cannot do, and it just breaks my heart. Anyway, that's a whole other story.
On that very, very point, and we're going to go off this, we need to go back to the positivity, but actually it's interesting, how many times do you hear people who've done amazing things in sport or in music or whatever, and they say, oh, my teacher told me this, I'd never do that, but I thought, I'm going to prove them wrong. That's all very well, but I think that teacher has done more damage to more kids by saying that stuff to them. You hear the one story of someone who's been really successful, but actually it completely dulls the ambition of maybe 100 kids, maybe 200, maybe 500 kids compared to that one that came through that's gone, bugger you, I'm going to show you. Because that really does, you have to be so careful with young people as far as your influence on them, and you know that better than anyone, Bruce, and so careful. It's okay now and again to have a laugh at them and go, really, and it's okay to kind of realize when they make mistakes that you can laugh at it, but as long as you're not laughing at it by destroying them, you've got to laugh at it and look at how are we going to move on from that. But to say you can't do anything, God almighty, that's not what we're here for. We're here to give them an opportunity to do anything they want and catch them when they fall, but still give them that support. Oh God, it really upsets me too.
Yeah, well, we're on the same page.
That's a direction we wouldn't expect this chat to go.
No, I know. Let's get on to Deacon Blue, because I love Deacon Blue. I think everybody loves Deacon Blue, and I remember being on Arran, and you were actually there, and I've never told you this story because you pinched my table in the beer garden in Lamlash, and my mate Donnie McBride was absolutely raging. But that's a whole other story. But there was a boat. There was a boat.
First come, first served.
I can't even remember where it was on Arran, but I took a picture of it, and it was a little rowing boat, and it was called Dignity.
Yes.
And there must be 1,000 boats called Dignity because of Deacon Blue. Now, that Greatest Hits album that you're talking about has a special place in my heart, and I'm just going to leave that there because my wife listens to this podcast, or she tells me she does. I'm still not convinced she does. But your music, the music you've been part of, has been the soundtrack to amazing things in people's lives, or they've come to a concert and they've left happier than when they arrived and with a memory that will last forever. Do you ever think about that, or were you just playing music because it was fun?
All the time, every single show, Bruce. I'm not kidding you now, and not reinventing history. This is absolutely what we were talking about all the time when we were playing. We before we went on stage, it was always, if somebody falls in love tonight, and this is like the early days when we're playing clubs. If somebody falls in love tonight, we've done a good job. If you can change. If they go out, or even better, if they go and buy a record, we're going to do things. But we genuinely, we wanted to create moments genuinely in every single show, and it's all driven by Ricky. But we totally bought into that, and because I wanted to study to be a musician, I was studying to be a musician. Deacon Blue we were a professional organisation. We worked hard at what we did. We rehearsed ridiculous amounts, when we were younger, and we still do. We probably rehearse a lot more on our own, so we're prepared enough for the rehearsals when we go in together. But yeah, we used to work extraordinarily hard. And the live show, we genuinely talked about it, making sure that if you can make a difference to one person during that show, any show you do, then it's worthwhile. And that could be someone holding hands, or the first time you kiss that lassie, or whatever. And we were desperate to create these mighty moments. That's why Ricky would do these things when we were playing, where he would almost take the audience on. It was like a battle, and it was like, I'm going to make you get so quiet. I'm going to get you so quiet, and then start going singing off mic, or we'd start singing a Van Morrison song in the middle of Chocolate Girl or something, and we're not expecting it. But these wee moments we're trying to create that was great. It didn't always work, but we tried every single time. So yes, we're never just playing the music, never just going through the motions. And if anyone was, their arses were kicked. Seriously. If anyone in the crew who was part of it, we probably would be a bit of a pain in the arse in terms of making sure we wanted everything, including everybody involved in the show. was part of this important kind of making that moment happen. So we're all about that. Totally all about that.
I love hearing that. Did you have like a team talk before you went out?
Yeah, I mean, we did. We kind of tended to have a bit of a blether before we went on stage, just to focus the mind. It's hugely important before you do anything that we'd always make sure that our dressing room was clear just a wee bit before we went out, and just to have it. We kind of thought. I mean, now before we go on stage, we actually have a wee kind of a little huddle, and someone says something, and it all sounds a bit airy-fairy, but actually it's a brilliant thing to do. You need to remember how to, the reason you're here. You remember people who are no longer here, and all of that stuff. And we genuinely now, and more than ever, just like really feel blessed that we're still able to do it. And it's a lovely thing to be able to do. We're in Australia and New Zealand at the end of 2019 doing gigs, and we're going next year. I think we're planning to go off and do more across there if we can. And that's. Yeah, I'm 54 and Ricky's 9 years older than me. So being able to still do that all these years later is just a lovely thing. We never take it for granted. And I don't know, I hope it's because of that effort we put in that maybe the people still are interested. I don't know. Because there's obviously people who listen to the records, and there's people who come and see us live. And I hope that when people come and see us live, they go, shit, they're working pretty hard. They look knackered when they walk off the stage at the end. And we did back then. I mean, we used to play for so long, almost as long as I'm talking at the moment. But it was like we do look done in at the end of the shows. I mean, it's physically it's a big sort of thing for us, So we have to, make sure we're doing a good thing.
It's so like sport now. I saw you, or I met you in the Six Nations of 2020. So you'd done your tour in Aussie and Kiwi, and you'd come back, and I remember asking you, and New Zealand gave you a massive buzz. The reception you got in New Zealand was huge. Did you realize at any point that this is worldwide? This is I'm wee Dougie who started on the truck. Like, do you pinch yourself?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, the first time I ever felt. This is quite early days in the band, although when I say early days, it's because I'm talking to a guy who's 54. And when I say early days, when you're in the band and building, we were sort of, I guess we signed a record deal, and we were sort of going professionally for 8 years, and before we kind of split up in 1994, kind of split. But before that, there's a couple of years before that, so 10 years. I look at that first part as 10 years. So in the early part, maybe like third or fourth year. And we were on tour, and we were in playing a gig in Amsterdam, and we were playing Dignity, and they sang along to Dignity. So all these Dutch people who don't speak English as a first language were singing Dignity, and it was like they knew the words to their tune. How's that? And you're like, that is amazing. And you're going to look around going. Now, most of the Dutch people can speak really good English anyway, but then when you hear people in Spain singing it, and then you're like, oh my God. We had a live version of Dignity, which was the B-side to Real Gone Kid, which it was different. They put things out differently. Yeah. Real Gone Kid and a live version of Dignity was a double A-side in Spain as a single, and I went to #1 in Spain. You're like, that's amazing. and so these people in Spain, of course, speaking different versions of that language, singing along to Dignity. So it was amazing.
And that's like for sport, I suppose, hearing someone chant your name if you score a try or score a goal, or you do something ridiculous. Is that the moment? Is it when you hear everybody singing back to you? Like, does Ricky just sort of drop the mic and let them take over? And you obviously can't sort of drop the mic and see what's going on. You've got to keep going. But you've spoken a lot about emotion, and music is, of course, it's emotion. It's you communicating an emotion. And songs like Chocolate Girl are different from Real Gone Kid, and Dignity is a different thing again. And so how can you, I mean, your concentration must be off the hook if you can still keep the beat on the drums while absorbing all that, or is it afterwards that you can get the real kick?
No, I mean, because And it's actually quite good because being trained as an orchestral musician, you can actually, it's really important to be able to listen to everything and to hear what's going on and get a sense of what's going on. But one thing I can never see beyond the first two rows because I'm sitting at the back, and I never see the audience. And because the audience are generally quite dark anyway, Ricky probably could see further in. And we used to use these little blinders during Dignity. And sort of, we just put on a big rack, and we'd light the audience. We can't do that now because the audience are all bald, so it kind of shines back, and it's like a disco ball, and we end up getting blinded, so we can't do it
anymore. That's just the women.
Exactly. Bigger foreheads, like Queen Elizabeth I. I don't know why I said that. I wish I hadn't. Right, here we go. So, yes, but going back to playing live shows. What did you ask me? I can't remember. There was a very salient point I was going to make there. Oh yeah, feeling that like doing all the things. It's really bizarre as a drummer because back in the days when people get more really excited, it was mostly stand-up shows as you get bigger and bigger and bigger. The front rows were all, and people start clapping along. So there are millions of we've recorded every show we've ever done. But Dignity, as soon as you start playing. And Ricky says, "There's man army," and so everyone else starts singing along, and then they start clapping. And audiences tend to want to clap and get faster and faster, but they're singing along with it. And I'm sitting there going, "Right, turn the hi-hat up," because I'm going, and I'm like, everyone in the band, I'm going, "Look at me, watch me," because it's like easy to go with them.
Yeah,
that agree in the guitar player. Sometimes if you slightly don't pay attention, look at the crowd going and really get into it, you think, "Shit, he's calling the crowd. Shit, stealing me." So I'm like, and I'm hearing them singing, "There's a man I meet." Very good, loud. Listen to the drum. So I'm kind of shouting to the audience, "Listen, we'll all be fine if you listen to this one. If you listen to the hi-hat, we'll all get to the end at the same time, and we'll not be knackered. That'll be fine."
So you're the captain.
Well, at that point, I certainly was a self-appointed captain in those days. I think I kind of made myself like, "Oh, it wasn't me." Because you have to have your role, don't you? Ricky's the singer. Jim's being all super talented, so I'm like, okay, what can I do? I can shout from the back, just like.
See, you always have a pop at yourself. Always have a pop at yourself. You never miss a chance, right? So, rock and roll in the 1980s. Scotland the Scottish voice is all over the place. Yeah. Scottish music is it. You must have had some absolute riots.
Yeah, actually, I remember we met the Proclaimers. We were on tour at the same time, and we met the Proclaimers in, I think again it was Sheffield, off the big rock and roll time in Sheffield, and we all got back to the hotel. We were playing different venues on the same night. And we all got back to the hotel and went to our beds. Oh man, I tell you, we used to stay in a hotel in London. All the bands used to stay in a hotel in London called the Columbia Hotel. And I remember we became aware of this band, Danny Wilson, right, who are from Dundee, who I totally loved. I mean, that first record, Mary's Prayer, still remains one of my favorite songs of all time. Yeah. Amazing. Second record, The Second Summer of Love, the video was recorded in reverse and all that, and it was like amazing. I loved them, but I remember we didn't know them at that point. Originally, they were called Spencer Tracy, weirdly, and they had to change their name to Danny Wilson because the estate of Spencer Tracy said you can't use that name. But we didn't know, hadn't heard their music, but we knew of them. And we remember we had been filming, I think, a video for Dignity, and we came back to this hotel at night. And all we heard was these boys in the corner having an argument in Dundonian, and like the roughest Dundonian. "You're the most unreliable person I've ever met. No, you're the most unreliable person I've ever met. No, you're the most unreliable person I've ever met." And they were like, and Ricky said, "I bet that's Danny Wilson. That sounds like a bunch of Dundonian boys having a fight." And of course, that's two brothers and their mate they were at school with, the three of them. And it was them. And that's what that night. We came over and introduced ourselves to them and said, "Oh, hi, we think you're great, by the way." And they were like, "Who are you?" We met them. They were kind of wild because they were filming the video for Mary's Prayer. And Gary Clark, who's the lead singer in that band, they'd had a few pina coladas the night before in the Columbia Hotel. And if you're shooting a video, you're always up early, super early, to go and get makeup done and all that. It's a bloody long day. Theirs was supposed to be a 2-day shoot, so they had their record company were spending money on them. Ours weren't. So Danny, Gary Clark, the lead singer, had a few pina coladas and basically couldn't get out of his bed, and you couldn't get him awake. The two other boys had got in the taxi and gone to the shoot, and everyone else was phoning the hotel. Eventually, they got the maid to go into the room and to like shake him out of his bed, and still he never got out of his bed. He was totally mashed. So he missed the first day of their video for their first single, and they were signed to Virgin. We were signed to CBS. So yes.
I'm trying to find it. Is this deflection? Is this deflection? Yeah. You're telling me stories about other bands here.
Yeah, we were the worst rock and roll band in the world. We were rubbish. We were crap at it. Because we were also a Presbyterian, we had a pretty strong work ethic. We're like, I genuinely, but I don't clean that ashtray up. Clean that ashtray up. Look, don't leave that mess lying there. And I always do it. And I always did it then, and I still do it. When you finish your drinks on the table, pick the glasses up and take them back to the bar. So we used to, it's pathetic. It's pathetic. I just imagine my mum going, Douglas, would you be happy if somebody left that lying there? No, you wouldn't, would you? Get it picked up and get it back to the bar. Okay, mum. So now we used to get letters, genuinely used to get letters from hotels, because we tend to stay in small hotels. And there was one hotel in Leicester, just outside Leicester, that we used to kind of base ourselves in. And it was a brilliant wee place. This is in the very early days. And it was in a place called Blaby. And we used to base ourselves there. And the guy liked us so much that he used to leave an honesty bar for us. So we get home in the middle of the night, and he'd leave an honesty bar, and he'd leave sandwiches and all that. And they had a had a snooker table, and they had a jacuzzi. And it was a nice wee small hotel. But they left us with an honesty bar, and of course, anybody else in any situation would go, right, we'll rip the piss out of this. Absolutely, like, whoa! But we didn't. We were like, we'd write everything down and go, fair play, decent, nice guy, and all that. And we genuinely, we'd write everything down, we'd tidy it up. Now and again, we were a bit. So we used to get letters from him, thank you so much for being so polite and nice. And you'd think, this is not rock and roll. This is just this is like going out to a tea shop. You need to get more wild.
I love it. I love that. Right. Before we move off of Deacon Blue, rugby players, when they stop, and I've just listened to Dan Carter recently, the thing they missed is the changing rooms.
Yes.
How did that go? You've said it's not massively rock and roll, but those moments that you shared with the people, and I read Bruce Springsteen's autobiography is absolutely stunning. He wrote it himself. It is beautiful, and there's a section in it that I absolutely love that could describe music or sport, and it's, we were a group of people brought together, different strengths. We performed every night to the best we could, and we shared those experiences, we made those memories, and I absolutely love it. What was that like for Deacon Blue?
Well, the thing, when we split up in 1994, because I met Ricky when I was 18, so, and he was a teacher in Glasgow at that point, and so established guy, he's got a job, he was writing all these songs. We kind of, we put the band. We originally put the band together, and then we slightly changed the people that were in it initially, because the guitar player and the bass player, actually, and the piano player at that time weren't really working. So we went round and got different people, and so Deacon Blue was formed. I'm the only original member, I guess, but you would never know the first guys. We've never actually really did any recording with these guys. We would just get a sense that it wasn't working as well as it could be. And I wanted you and Vernal to play bass because I knew he was amazing. Piano player Jim Prime, he'd been playing with Altered Images and he'd been working in the bank for a couple of years. And so Ricky was asking questions about people. And Graham Kelling, the guitar player, another guy was supposed to come along for an audition, but he didn't fancy it. So he sent Graham along instead. It just worked. So we're kind of like, it was classic stuff. We all met, so we didn't know each other. We weren't a bunch of pals at all. And then Lorraine obviously became involved when we were doing Raintown. Ricky and Lorraine fell in love and all of that, and it's amazing. But yeah, so we didn't know each other. So we kind of grew up together through the band and the success of the band, and sitting in a bus together and having good gigs and less good gigs and having good news and less good news and being on tour in Europe and having to cancel it because somebody's ill and all of that. So big highs, big lows, and the only people that you can actually talk about it was with them. Even though I got married when I was quite young, and I was with my wife, we were together for a long time. We were going through that. But in terms of actually the experience of being in the bus or being on tour or being in the studio or all of that, you could only really talk about it to the other people, and you end up having your own language. It's a weird kind of, you end up have your own kind of like way of speaking, and you say a word and it's a joke that you said 5 years ago. But when we split up in 1994, I very quickly tried to arrange days out or nights out or whatever, meet in the pub, or we'll go for a coffee, or we'll go for a curry. And not everyone turned up, and I got really upset about that. I was really kind of like, oh no, why don't you? But I didn't realize everyone needed a bit of time to actually get over what we'd been doing, and everyone needed to deal with it in their own way before coming back together and being able to do it again. But I was like, no, in a month's time, we're all going to meet, and it's going to be this, that, and the other. And it used to really, really upset me when it didn't show. But we needed to work out a way at the end of it. And I'm saying at the end because it took us 5 years to do anything again. And we didn't split up by falling out. We actually did. It was a kind of, we worked it out in a business way, as I told you at the start. It was a business sort of, if things don't improve, we're going to stop it. I mean, we just finished when we wanted. So yeah. So yes, that experience thing, that shared experience, was such an important thing, and amazing as well.
And I think now you're back. Is it better, or is it just different?
It's different now. It's very different now, because when you're at your first incarnation, you're really chasing something. You're really chasing that career, and you're chasing the records and all. You're in the charts. Although weirdly, in the last 8 years, we have put out quite a few records, and we have been creative again, and we have been doing stuff that I can really we can all hold on to and say this is actually pretty good. And we have weirdly had some chart success for all that means these days, because in terms of record sales, it's completely nothing compared to the old days. So actually having that ability to stay relevant and do new music, and City of Love, which was the record, came out a year ago, just before the pandemic hit, and the amount of people that actually sent messages about reading the lyrics in that and saying, oh, you must have been written up. It seems to be written for this time, but of course it wasn't. It was written in the 2 years leading up to when we released it. But the kind of messages of togetherness and hope and fellowship and love and broken hearts and all of that stuff is so important. And it seems that it was really touching for people to send little notes about the political content, and also the way that record sounds, because it sounds like a Deacon Blue record, but it sounds like a Deacon Blue record that's kind of moved on, and you're still doing things that you clearly love and you feel that are relevant. So it's a nice thing to still be part of. It's a brilliant thing to still be part of, and Ricky Ross is the driving force behind all that. No doubt about that.
I again spoke to you when you'd come back from New Zealand, and you were excited about this. You were excited about City of Love, and you said it's new stuff, and it's good stuff, and it's fresh stuff. So right, I'm gonna here's my segue from that. Deacon Blue played at quite an amazing event for a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Dougie Vipond. How did that come about? And then you're obviously heavily involved, or quite often involved in similar way to me. When we try and help out with Dougie. So your friendship and relationship with Dougie, and then how about that event that was down in Kelso?
Yeah, well, that is. I mean, I've known Dougie for a long time, and basically, I never knew Dougie when he was a player. More's the pity, because I wasn't. We were kind of touring. I mean, Dougie and I he's a couple of years younger than me, but he was playing at a time when we were kind of going around the world and touring and all that. So, but I got to know Dougie when I started presenting rugby for the BBC, and I'm laughing because every time he came into the studio, it was just a laugh. I mean, so funny. And so I just really we just sort of, as soon as we first time we met, we just kind of hit it off and just enjoyed each other's company. And he loved the wind up, as he does. He still does. He's a hell of a man for it. But it's all done in a lovely way. There's no, it's he would never take anything too far. He would everyone would laugh, but you'd never take anything too far. And I remember, I think I've told you this story before. The first time Chris Patterson ever came into the studio, Chris is obviously going on to be like a very serious and very successful broadcaster. But the first time he came into the studio, we were in Aberdeen, Scotland against Canada, I think it was, and Chris was injured because he'd sort of a suspected broken eye socket or something like that. So anyway, I said to him before we came into the studio, Dodie, Chris Patterson's coming in today, and I'm told he's really nervous, so don't you be winding him up. Be nice to him, okay? I want you to be really nice to him and make sure you welcome him in here because he's worried about it. And we're in this tiny little room at Pittodrie, and the lights are in and all that. And I said, be nice to him. And he went, of course I'll be nice to him. And so Chris Patterson opened the door, and Dodie went, all right, Shandy boy, what's wrong with you? I suspected broken eyes. Suspected. There was a time when I was away with the British and Irish Lions and my leg was hanging off. And I was like, Dodie, for God's sake, man. But it was funny. And Chris, that actually weirdly made Chris quite kind of calmed him down a wee bit because he was worried about doing the broadcast. Dodie was winding him up. And I always remember that day, Chris appeared in the studio and he had a blue shirt on, a light blue shirt. And I think he was worried about sweating, so he was wearing a T-shirt underneath it, right? White T-shirt and this blue shirt. And it was a roasting hot day. Actually, I reminded him about it recently. And I said, Chris, you were sitting there sweating like with a pale blue shirt. I think you didn't look comfortable. But I mean, Chris is a brilliant guy. He's amazing. But subsequently, I got to kind of know Dodie. Every year at the Highland Show, Dodie and I would meet and we'd go for a couple of pina coladas, a couple of pints, and have a laugh. And then, of course, Melrose every year we'd do the live broadcast and often go for a drink afterwards. And so Dodie's just such a great, positive guy and an amazing, fun, and really recognisable figure. Even before he became known as the guy with MND, Dodie is just such a lovely person, just such a lovely character, and such a positive influence. Walks into a room. Of course, you can see him, big gangly galope he is, but everyone sees him. But he smiles at everybody. He makes all the girls kind of go, flattered by his charm and his wit and his loveliness, and which is beyond me because he's a big ugly bastard. But there you go. But it's amazing. It's amazing. But he does exactly the same to every guy in the room as well. He charms them all. He makes everyone feel good. He's one of these guys that walks into the room and everyone feels better for having met him, and that's a brilliant gift. And it's something that he doesn't have to be that guy, but he is that guy, and he's always been that guy. So, when he got at M&D, it was just easy. Of course we're going to get involved. We're not going to. How can we not get involved with a guy like that? So the gig at Kelso, I kind of said to Ricky and Lorraine actually about potentially, coming down and doing, playing at that. And Ricky, I'd never actually asked Ricky to do anything. We've done charity things over the years, but I actually never asked Ricky to do anything before, just because he gets asked to do things all the time. And I'd never actually said to him, and I said, because I knew he had a friend who had died of MND. And I kind of was like going, listen, I'm involved with this Dodie Aid thing and Dodie charity. Oh, sorry, it wasn't Dodie Aid then, it was a Dodie's charity and all that. And he had seen something or had been in touch. I think he'd met Dodie. He'd met Dodie when he was with me. Dodie was with me, he met him. And I said, listen, I've never asked you this before, but we're doing this dinner and it's big. We're trying to raise as much money as possible. And he said, do you want me to do it? And I said, would you come down and do it? And I said, well, we'll have to make sure it's good because the band couldn't do it because the band are a pain in the arse in terms of we require a lot of plugins and help or roadies and things. It's a complicated thing. Deacon Blue arriving on the stage in the middle of Kelso, it would have been difficult to do it. Technically, more than anything. So I said, Ricky, would you do it? He went, I'll do it. Of course, I'll do it. I'd be delighted to do it. And he was absolutely kind of like no hesitation. I'd love to do it. And he came down and he played a couple of tunes. And he just loved it, and he made a wee speech afterwards about he doesn't come from the rugby tradition at all. He's a football guy. He's supports Dundee United. He'd never really been to much rugby games, but he got a sense of the love in the room. He could feel the love in the room, and it wasn't for him. It was all for Dodie, and all for the greater good. And he was totally and utterly blown away by that night, and it was a brilliant night, absolutely brilliant. And I was hosting it as well. Along with Jill Douglas, the pair of us were doing that together. So in the company of greatness with Jill, she's amazing, and she's from down there as well. So she knew everyone. There was all the stories flying around, and it was lovely to be part of. And I was quite nervous to make sure Ricky was all right and all that. But it didn't matter. We raised. That night, I think they raised, not me. They raised a lot of money. So it was really nice to be a part of. And Ricky has since. We've had Dodie along at gigs since then, and And he's always asking me how he's doing. And he messaged him and all that. So it's been a lovely thing, that really lovely thing to be part of.
It's class, and you've done so much for it. And your involvement in sport, you're a Buddies fan, St Mirren, and you've done things for the club, and you host football. You did the commie games. Again, are you pinching yourself when these opportunities come along?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely, because, as I said to you earlier, it was either music or sport that I wanted to do at school. So when I realized I wasn't good enough to be at sport, the next best thing is you have your music career, and then you start working in the company of great sports people. So yeah, if you're broadcasting, you meet sports people, you meet your heroes, you meet folk that you've watched on the telly, and they're your pundits. So I'm constantly, and I have to stop giggling actually when I walk and I meet people and go, nice to meet you. I met Sean Fitzpatrick, and we were working for the Beeb, and I was like, oh my God, what are you going to do? And Keith Wood was on the programme sitting there going, I watched that Lions documentary, you're amazing. And I was a terrifying individual, but he's just lovely. So you meet all these people. And they're great. Jeremy Guswit, obviously. And
Offstage gag. We'll come back
we
to
should
that.
never do an offstage gag.
But that's everybody loves Dougie Vipond because you love all those things you do and the people that you're with. And you're talking about Doddy putting people at ease. People love working with Dougie Vipond. It's warm and it's cuddly, and things like Landward and the Adventure Show and all those things. It's just comfortable, nice, and I'm not surprised you got letters from hotels saying thank you. You are close to bloody perfect, Mr. Vipond.
Boy, it's actually dull.
No.
I should be a bit more rock and roll.
No, this is the man we love. It is brilliant, Dougie. I'm worried now because I'm getting it's time up because people are going to have to listen to this in 3 bits. So, firstly, thank you. But at the end of the pods, I would ask people to finish the sentence, and you're not allowed to give me the family and the sort of stock answer. So you have to finish the sentence, happiness is. So for Dougie Vipond, happiness is...
So I can't do the stock answer. I was going to say my boys. Immediately I was saying my sons, but I can't do that.
It has to be something with the boys. It can't just be the boys. We know you love your boys. What is it? What are the moments with your boys?
At the moment with my boys, it's sadly Zoom chat. That's all I've got because I haven't seen them for such a long time. Happiness is hugging them and I'll give them a kiss, but that's not happening just now. But happiness, I actually think happiness for me is being out on my bike.
And I know that because you did lots of that. And I'm worried about, especially what's Scotland, but then places like Newcastle, I'm worried what they're like when the pubs open. I hate to think the carnage of that. But when it opens up, are your 3 boys now your mates? Can you have a barbecue and a few beers and Nick will throw something on the barbecue and you just have a grand old time? Or are you still watching them saying, behave yourself, I'm your dad?
Well, of course I'm going to say behave yourself, I'm your dad. But I think that the younger, their age group, I think all kids have had a really tricky time this past year. And, when I was that age, the only thing I was worried about is have I had enough money to buy a pint of tennis, and genuinely, and I was, the fact that they're having to think big picture about pandemic and being careful and all that, they're at the age where you should be carefree. They're at the age where you make an arse of things and somebody picks you up or not, or you see somebody else making an arse of things and somebody picks them up and where you develop friendships that last for life. And I think they're not really getting the chance to do that because they've got this bigger thing to worry about. So I am concerned for that generation. I genuinely think that we're going to have to kind of, treat them carefully when they come out. So the answer to your question is, will he still be pals? Yes. If we're having the barbecue in my back garden, we're all drinking beer, although Hamish, the youngest, doesn't really drink because he's only 17 at the moment. And I genuinely think he's not drinking, but he can have a drink if he wants. But of course I'm still going to be going, right, you've had 15 now. No more than 20. Be careful. Don't overdo it.
Yeah, you'll not be getting a letter thanking you tomorrow morning for your conduct this evening.
Exactly, like your dad used to.
Like your dad used to.
See, that's the worrying thing, Bruce. I'm just going to have to say to you one thing I've got to stop myself from doing, and I do it all the time, and I've got to stop myself from doing it with them, is because I have had quite a lot of experience, and any father has had experience. I mean, you're anywhere you go. Oh, I remember I did this, we did that. Oh, in that bar there, we did that. And it's nice to be able to do that, but also I have to be asking them things about what they're doing, what experience they're had there, and so that it doesn't slightly belittle just because I played it. There's Edinburgh Castle. We played in the ramparts there and all that. I want them to remember when we went to Edinburgh Castle when we were younger, because that's more important. So I need to stop that.
Yeah, and not every dad can pull those stories, so didn't give me that rubbish.
No, but just in terms of but you know what I mean. But everyone has their own stories, but they have it's their time. It's their time to shine. It's their time to flourish and have their life and all that stuff as well. And that's important. It's very important.
Dougie, I absolutely love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on. I don't know if you're telling me the truth that you don't do pods because you're an absolute master, but I'm so glad you came on here. I have loved it. Thank you.
I don't do them just for you, Bruce. I genuinely, I don't do. It's because you guys do them all the time. I could be doing one every day, every week. So no, but you asked me straight away. I was like, happiness is doing Bruce's podcast.
Yes, we're going to cut that. That's going to be oh, you bugger, yeah. Dougie Vipond, thank you. Go and enjoy the rest of your day. You are an absolute star, and I hope to see you in person soon, probably at Murrayfield.
Let's hope so. Turn the music down, Bruce. Good to hear
you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was one of the most enjoyable hours I could spend in the company of greatness. I love him to bits. He is a role model. If you've enjoyed this, please go to Apple, Acast, and Spotify. Please subscribe. Leave a review if you've enjoyed it. If you didn't enjoy it, remember, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So leave us a review. Make sure other people can see it and hear about it. Subscribe. Tell your friends, because happiness is. Dougie Vipond has been and seen and done it all. And don't we just love him for it? And I cannot wait to be in his company again. We'll also be live on Facebook and YouTube, so catch us there. Thank you to big, handsome Sean for pushing the buttons and pulling the strings from Fill Your Boots. Give him a follow and listening in to his podcast as well. My name is Bruce Aitchison from Happiness is Egg-Shaped, and this has been the Happiness Is podcast.